Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music. This week, we've been talking about evolving dissonance. Dissonance plays an important role in interesting music. It propels us forward harmonically, and no good music would exist without conflict, tension, and release. There are some very specific rules in conventional harmony about preparing dissonances, how to resolve them, also what my teacher called evaporating dissonance. But there's something that I think gets used a lot in modern music, in scoring, in epic music, which I've decided to call, for want of a better word maybe, evolving dissonance, where the dissonances of a chord tumble forward into the next, and there's never a complete resolution, but there's a propulsion forward. I've got 6 examples. Let's take a look at them today. Well, I think maybe we should talk really quickly about what I mean when I say dissonance. And it could be anything, but like that major second is a dissonant interval in conventional harmony. And there are beautiful chords which have dissonances built into them. What I just played was a fairly conventional plagal cadence, a 4-chord F resolving to a sus and then a 1-chord C. And if you take a look at the F here and the F here, they're both present in this chord. This C sus has an F in it. That F has been, we say, prepared by the previous F. And when it finally travels from the F down to the E, when that voice travels down, it resolves. So we have a dissonance which is prepared and which resolves. We could also evaporate this dissonance, and I love that sound. So that F never changed. It was present in all those chords. I had F, C sus, and the dissonant tone became the major third of D flat major. Now that's a really interesting effect. This kind of thing has been used for centuries. I've got a Bach example to show you from one of the chorales, and then a more, I would say, modern iteration of the same kind of thing. So let me roll back. So here we've got a Bach chorale, and it's got a couple of great examples of dissonances, things where a chord tone will hang out from a previous chord and create a kind of a moment of friction before things finally resolve. We're in G minor. That suspension there, classic example. You also hear independent lines. The suspensions resolve as part of a motion within the line. And it resolves to a Picardy third, the major third in a minor piece. Well, that's terrific. Bach would probably have always resolved those suspended or prepared dissonances. But in contemporary scoring, we can avoid doing that. And in fact, it's suggestive. What it says is, I really just need to use my intuition about the motion of voices. So if we start with a single F and add a dissonant tone, and allow voices to move by step, we'll have moments of dissonance and release. Very little of that was consonant, and yet it propelled itself forward by creating moments of suspension, release, evaporating the dissonance into a new chord. Well, I've kind of used all those techniques in my 6 examples, so I'm going to roll all the way back to the beginning and we'll take a look at them one by one. So let's start with a simple C chord, and notice how the outer voices move to create tension, a dissonance that's a major second in the center of the instrumental form that stays there as things progress around it. So just C major, kind of a D, G but with a little suspension, E7 goes to a kind of a sus A, and then there's the A sus again, and let's release to an A major, which has little relation to C. Let's go back to C. Listen to how propulsive that is. Your ears led forward by the evolving dissonance. I'll just highlight one thing. In the second half of this example, I used one more trick, which is, I guess you would just say, a rhythmic displacement or a bit of rhythmic dissonance coming off this C chord. Here we go. The melody note doesn't move until the and of one. And here again, that sense of rhythmic displacement is a kind of dissonance also, isn't it? And it creates a real strong leading tone going to the A major at the end. All right, we should go on to the next example. This one is a lot like an example I showed of 2-5 pairs progressing downward in whole steps last week, and it's got the same motion here. And there are really strong, you might call them almost like jazz chords, because 2-5s are typically found in jazz, but those evolving dissonances as it moves from one chord to the other never lets us off the hook. We're constantly pushed forward here. B flat major becomes B flat minor, which is 2-5-1 to A flat, and then A flat minor. And that takes us to the G flat or F sharp major. We never get let off the hook. There's the E, and then an F7 that takes us back to B flat. There's something really elegant about this. The delicacy of it belies its real strength harmonically. Those voicings really make it work, and the voicings have very strong dissonances in it. Minor seconds, stacks of thirds that are just like right next to each other like that. I mean, that's just a crush, what my teacher used to call an assemblage, or maybe a cluster. You might like to think of it that way. Let's go on to the next example. Well, this is going to start with E major, and we're going to hear some pedal tones, some repeated notes within the figure. This very strong E major sound. There's the major 7 and the A sound. And then I'm going to leverage that E and repeat it as part of the major 7 and Lydian tone, F, B flat. Really kind of beautiful extra notes within the chord. Repeated tones are our friend with this kind of technique because they validate the current tension that we're experiencing. I heard that note before. It was fine. I liked it. It worked well. And we're going to go forward and kind of hear it some more. It's So interesting to me. Well, listen, it's always going to be like that. There's always going to be a previous note from the chord that came before present in the next new chord. So let's go on to our next example. And here we have an example of, I guess it's kind of a phrygian sound. We start on a G and then up to A flat major. That's a beautiful sound, isn't it? The D and the G still on the top. It's kind of an evaporating dissonance, and back to the phrygian sound. That G is so, it's almost heroic when it finally lands, right? I've got a couple more examples, but listen, before we go on, I just want to say, if you're getting something out of this channel, if this is the second or third video of mine you've seen, and you're not subscribed, subscribe now, please. We're trying to kind of build a community here of composers, songwriters, musicians who are interested in using music theory and ideas about composition, arranging, harmony, melody, not in an academic way, but in a way to serve their own interests. This is music theory that I hope is immediately useful, is stimulating, gets you going, maybe helps you give a name to something which you sort of know already. I hope this is music theory for everyone. All right, let's go on to the last two examples. This last example is sort of held together by tiny little melodic gestures on the top, and you'll hear a lot of the same ideas present in it. Here we're going to begin. Sus sound, and the A and the E. That's an interesting one to me because it does have a melodic component, and there are a couple of dominant chords. They never resolve exactly where you expect them to. And in my own music, I try to avoid dominant chords in general because they have such a strong identity associated with, I just say, conventional Western European music theory. But if you sort of subvert the dominant chord a little bit and maybe go someplace unexpected, I find it more interesting. And so we've used that technique here. I love having a tiny little like call out melody on the top just to help my ear organize the new surprising harmonic results sometime. I got one last example. It's one of my favorite types of instrumental forms, the interlocking hands pattern. Let's take a look at it. So I've got one hand assigned to the A and the G, and another hand assigned to these little interior voices. So that's one hand and then an interior voice. Already pretty dissonant. Evolving dissonance is always going to be experienced by the listener as incremental, tiny changes. And so it's well suited to anyone working in a minimalist style, but it's also great for scoring, for epic music. Imagine some of these handed out to, say, woodwinds, strings, these beautiful textures that kind of gradually open up, unfold, take us to unusual places. Evolving dissonance won't be on any of your, music theory tests. It's an expression I use for myself because it describes what I'm experiencing when I'm doing this kind of thing. I'm sort of pushing myself forward. There's plenty of examples of it or the use of it in the canon, kind of in every musical style. But I hope this has been useful. Like and subscribe, ding the bell. You'll be notified when I do my videos. I'll see you next time.